I also wonder too what you made of what happened at that Downing Street briefing when questions were asked about government ministers breaking the rules. 3 times Matt Hancock was asked, and 3 times he essentially said, no, I'm not talking about that. Now, there are a couple of things here, aren't there? In response to the first question from Laura Kunsberg, which was essentially this: if a government minister is found to have broken the rules, should they resign? Matt Hancock's response was, well, look, Boris Johnson answered lots of questions in the Commons today about this, so I'm not going to add to that. Well, to be strictly accurate, Boris Johnson responded to lots of questions in the Commons. But on some of the critical questions, there was no answer. The other thing Matt Hancock wanted to emphasise was this was a COVID briefing. It should all be about COVID. There's lots to say about COVID because, if I can remember the phrase that Matt Hancock used, some incredibly important things were going on. And that's a fair point, of course, isn't it? Because it is a COVID briefing, and I suppose you could argue, look, what on earth are journalists asking other things for? And why would a politician standing at the podium want to talk about something other than COVID if it's a COVID briefing? Well, that doesn't hold water either, does it? Because was it last week that Boris Johnson himself, at a supposedly COVID briefing, was asked lots of questions about the European Super League, you remember? He didn't respond to those by saying, oh, no, this is a COVID briefing. I can't possibly talk about football. He enthusiastically talked about football at great length at a supposed COVID briefing. So why was it okay to talk about non-COVID things last week when the Prime Minister was passionate about trying to stop the European Super League, but when questions come up about government ministers' probity, that's not allowed today? It's also worth saying that at a previous news conference, Boris Johnson himself decided to launch a political attack on some of his opponents. Again, nothing to do with COVID, but that was okay then. But tonight, questions were not answered about government ministers and their behaviour. You may have your own view on this and feel free to share it in the usual way. The other thing I would say before we get into the Electoral Commission is this. We can talk about should journalists have asked those questions. We can talk about should the news conference always be about COVID. I stress it frequently is always talking about things that are non-COVID. But the other thing is that this room in which the news conference took place cost £2.6 million of your money. This is supposed to be a media briefing room. And today, we had a minister standing up and repeatedly saying, I'm not answering that. I'm not even going to try to answer that question. So what is the point of spending £2.6 million when ministers seem to feel they can simply ignore questions? And let's keep in mind that the journalists anyway have their microphones muted after the first question is asked.